intensifying. Russian weapons factory mass production of new tanks shocks NATO. WashingtonPost.com reports Russia ramps up weapons production, using mass quantity to outgun Ukraine. Russian weapons factories play a crucial role in the country's military-industrial complex, producing a wide range of armaments for domestic use and export. These factories, operated by state-owned enterprises such as Eurovagonzavod and Kurganmachzavod, are equipped with advanced manufacturing capabilities and employ skilled engineers and technicians. Over the years, they have supplied weapons and military equipment to various conflict zones and client states, showcasing Russia's status as a major arms exporter. In the context of the Ukrainian conflict, Russian weapons factories have been instrumental in supplying tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, and other weaponry to separatist forces in eastern Ukraine. The proliferation of Russian-made weapons has fueled the intensity of the conflict and contributed to its intractability. Moreover, the involvement of Russian weapons factories underscores the close nexus between the military-industrial complex and the Russian state, with arms production serving as both a strategic asset and a lucrative export opportunity. Russia has ramped up military production by replenishing stocks of standard weapons and ammunition, and probably can sustain its onslaught in Ukraine for at least the next 2 years. Analysts say a sobering assessment for Kiev, which is short on weapons and soldiers and losing ground on the battlefield. While the Kremlin is struggling to expand capacity and to develop modern arms that could improve its army's battlefield performance, it has capitalized on its overwhelming advantage in numbers of soldiers, its ability to arm them with old but reliable weaponry, and a willingness to endure heavy casualties. By recalibrating its economy on a war footing, forcing existing facilities to work in overdrive to produce or refurbish older equipment, and buying parts from Iran, China, and North Korea, Russia has made a surprising recovery from its early losses in Ukraine. Russia is not producing more of its modern fighting equipment, said Nikolai Kobaka, a Russian economist. But it has been making a lot more of simpler working equipment, rifles, shells, mass weapons for mass soldiers. As Western military aid for Kiev has slowed in recent months, including in the United States, Russian forces have retaken the initiative in Ukraine, where they can now fire artillery and deploy drones at a far higher rate than the Ukrainians. Russia has rearmed its forces by refurbishing existing gear, much of it dating to the Soviet era. Replacement parts from China, North Korea, and Iran are of inconsistent quality, experts said, but procuring them has demonstrated Moscow's ability to circumvent sanctions. The Soviet-era equipment, including missiles and guided aerial bombs, has compensated for Russia's failure, at least so far, to produce and deploy new, advanced weapons such as the T-14 Armada tank that theoretically could rival the U.S.-made Abrams and German-made Leopards that the West has given Ukraine. U.S. officials initially believed the war in Ukraine had seriously degraded Russia's military. But Gen. Christopher G. Cavalli, the top U.S. commander in Europe, testified in Congress this month that Moscow now had more soldiers than at the start of its invasion, and that its armed forces have shown an accelerating ability to learn and adapt to battlefield challenges both tactically and technologically. Late last year, Russian President Vladimir Putin approved a record increase in military spending for 2024, planning to spend around $115 billion, nearly one-third of the country's total annual budget, and double the amount allocated for the military in 2021, the year before the invasion of Ukraine. In recent months, top Russian officials, including Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, have claimed record numbers, reporting to Putin that the military-industrial complex has quadrupled production of armored vehicles, quintupled the supply of tanks, and boosted manufacturing of drones and artillery shells by nearly 17 times. These numbers, including a claim that 500 tanks were built in 2023, cannot be verified because the government does not disclose statistics about military production and the costs of the war, and because the military often uses creative accounting, conflating new and rebuilt material to show positive results. My impression is that Shoigu's numbers and the figure of 500 tanks supplied over 2023 is technically correct, but it also includes refurbished stuff, said Michael G. Jerstad, land warfare analyst at the International Institute for Strategic Studies IAS, a London-based think tank. There could also be a percentage of tanks that are being cannibalized and their parts used to make other tanks, which could also be added into the statistics. G. Jerstad said he believes Russia can manufacture up to 330 tanks a year, but is actually building half that. Still, Russia managed to replenish about 140 tanks that it is estimated to have lost in 2023 by dusting off and refurbishing old armor taken from storage. Experts note that the supply of existing gear is limited and that a key challenge for Russia is to develop capacity to build new fighting vehicles when it runs out of old models to upgrade. The last new hull for the T-80 tank was built decades ago. Instead, Russia has gutted and refurbished hundreds that were made more than 50 years ago. But in the fall, Russian military commanders ordered a renewal of production at Omstrensmash, short for Omsk Transport Engineering Plant, where the T-80 is built. This is the task at hand, Alexander Potapov, the CEO of Omstrensmash's parent company, tank maker Eurovigan Zavod, told the state-run Zvezda news outlet at the time. The plant's engineers told state media that it takes about a month to remodel one tank. But Pavel Aksionov, a military expert and defense correspondent for the BBC's Russian service, said the effort so far had yielded nothing. They have not been able to restart this serial manufacturing, Aksionov said. It is a lot easier to boost the rates of existing production. It is similarly unlikely that Russia can supply its army with more modern hardware, like the T-14 Armada tank, which debuted with an array of new fighting vehicles at the 2015 Victory Day parade and infamously got stuck during rehearsals. Russian state media published reports citing unnamed military officials that the Armada had been tested on Ukrainian front lines, prompting speculation it would soon be supplied to units there. But last month, the head of Russia's defense manufacturer, Rostec, Sergei Chemezov, said the Armada will not be deployed in Ukraine because of its high cost. Of course, it is much superior to other tanks in terms of functionality, but it is too expensive, Chemezov said, according to state media. Therefore, the army is unlikely to use it now. It's easier to buy T-90. Neither the manufacturer, Eurovigan Zavod, nor officials have disclosed the cost of the tank. But in 2011, Russian experts estimated it to be around $79 million, compared with about $36 million for the T-90's modification. Aksionov said there is no proof that production of the Armada was ever finalized. They didn't have enough time to nail it down before the war, he said. And although it was logical to begin that level of modernization, because Soviet technology is very outdated, and the invasion showed this, a war requires a different approach. You need reliable equipment steadily supplied to the front line, one that is well known to the troops, has no childhood diseases and plenty of spare parts to fix it, Aksionov continued. G. Jerstad said Russia has sought to offset supplies of advanced Western equipment to Ukraine by prioritizing quantity and allocating better tanks to better trained units, while supplying older T-55 and T-62 machines to units composed of conscripts and ex-convicts. To increase supply, Russia struck a deal with Iran to set up a factory for Shah drones in Tatarstan, about 500 miles east of Moscow, and has pushed for a major increase in production of Russia's Lancet self-detonating drone, manufactured by a subsidiary of Russian arms giant Kalashnikov concern. They've been converting old shopping centers into drone production facilities, where they were apparently able to scale up the production quite a bit, said Fabian Hintz, a drone expert with IAS. Russia doesn't have to become the most innovative army in the world, Hintz added. If they manage to get a few systems that work well, like the Lancet, and then they manage to just brutally force through production, that's already dangerous enough. To circumvent sanctions, Russia has forged new supply chains to obtain Western components for high-tech military equipment, with parts routed through Turkey, China, and Kazakhstan, experts said, as the West has struggled with enforcement. A recent report by the Kiev School of Economics concluded Russia continues to be able to acquire large amounts of the inputs that it needs for its military production. Imports of priority goods are down just 10% since sanctions were imposed, the report found. Russia also has sought basic raw materials. Officials in the Baltics last month called for banning sales of manganese ore, a key component in steel and alloy production, after Estonian media reported that supplies to Russia had surged often via Estonian and Latvian ports. Russia has also managed to acquire supplies of nitrocellulose, a compound needed to produce explosives such as artillery shells, according to a report by Ukraine's Center for Defense Strategies, including from Germany, Taiwan, and China. 3. Recent reports suggest that Russian weapons factories have ramped up the production of new tanks, signaling a significant escalation in military capabilities amid the Ukrainian conflict. The exact specifications and models of these tanks remain undisclosed, but analysts speculate that they may include upgraded variants of existing designs or entirely new platforms with advanced features. The sudden surge in tank production has raised questions about its timing and intended purpose, particularly in the context of ongoing hostilities in Ukraine. One plausible explanation for the mass production of tanks is to replenish Russia's own armored forces, which have been actively engaged in military exercises and deployments along the Ukrainian border. Tanks are a critical component of modern warfare, providing firepower, mobility, and protection on the battlefield. By bolstering its tank inventory, Russia may seek to enhance its deterrent capabilities and demonstrate resolve amid geopolitical tensions with the West. Additionally, the production of new tanks could serve as a strategic response to perceived threats from NATO expansion and military buildup in Eastern Europe. However, another plausible scenario is that these tanks are destined for export to client states or proxies involved in regional conflicts, including Ukraine. Russia has a history of arming and supporting allied regimes and insurgent groups, leveraging arms sales as a means of extending its influence and pursuing strategic objectives. The influx of new tanks into conflict zones could tip the balance of power in favor of Russia's allies, further complicating efforts to de-escalate tensions and negotiate a peaceful settlement. Implications and challenges. The mass production of tanks by Russian weapons factories carries significant implications for regional dynamics and international security. Firstly, it risks exacerbating the conflict in Ukraine by providing separatist forces with additional firepower and operational capabilities. The influx of new tanks could embolden insurgents to escalate their offensive actions, leading to a renewed cycle of violence and instability in eastern Ukraine. Moreover, it could undermine diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis and perpetuate the status quo of protracted conflict. Secondly, it raises concerns about the proliferation of advanced weaponry in volatile regions, with potential consequences for neighboring states and global security. The spread of Russian-made tanks and other military hardware could fuel arms races, trigger preemptive actions by rival powers, and escalate regional tensions to dangerous levels. It also poses challenges for arms control and non-proliferation efforts, highlighting the need for enhanced monitoring and regulation of arms transfers in conflict-prone areas. Thirdly, it underscores the complex interplay between state-sponsored militarization and economic interests within the Russian military-industrial complex. The mass production of tanks not only serves strategic objectives, but also generates revenue for Russian arms manufacturers and sustains employment in the defense sector. This creates a perverse incentive structure whereby conflict and instability become profitable ventures, incentivizing the perpetuation of armed conflicts and undermining efforts to achieve peace and security.